It's now my great honor to welcome His Excellency Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada.
Merci Nick. Bonjour tout le monde. Avant de commencer, je dois répéter à quel point c'était déplorable de voir la violence et les manifestations vendredi soir ici à Montréal. En tant que démocratie, nous défendrons toujours la liberté d'expression, la liberté de manifester, d'exprimer son désaccord, son opposition. Mais il n'y a jamais de la place pour la violence, la haine, l'intimidation. Nous devons assurer que les lois sont respectées et qu'il y ait des conséquences pour tous les responsables. I need to begin by once again reiterating that what we saw in the violence and the riots on Friday night are absolutely unacceptable. As a democracy, as a country that will always defend the freedom of speech, it's important for people to be able to go out and protest and express their anger, their disagreements in free and comfortable ways, but there is never any room for anti-Semitism, for hatred, for discrimination, for violence. We expect all those responsible to be pursued and punished under the full extent of the law, and we expect the authorities to do their work. But it's a real pleasure to be here today with all of you. Je veux offrir mes salutations et mes remerciements tout d'abord aux peuples autochtones qui nous ont accueillis sur ce territoire et nous ont commencé de la bonne façon. Raymond, Julie, pour leur leadership et leur discours. Je reconnais que les parlementaires qui sont ici de mon équipe, David, Brenda, Patricia et Valerie. Nick, merci pour ton leadership ici. Chers délégués, je suis très content de vous recevoir ici, chez moi, à Montréal, dans ma ville. On doit avoir une pensée pour le sénateur Joe Day, qui nous a quittés, et évidemment, une grosse pensée et toute notre force envoyée au président de l'Assemblée, Jerry Connolly, qui mène un combat contre le cancer avec lequel nous l'appuyons et nous espérons le revoir très bientôt. Cette 70e session annuelle de l'Assemblée parlementaire de l'OTAN est extrêmement importante et vient à un moment charnière dans notre monde. Votre travail et les relations que vous bâtissez entre vous sont au cœur de l'unité euro-atlantique qui est plus cruciale que jamais. We are in an extraordinarily pivotal and difficult time in the world right now. The destabilization of the rules-based order that has held and steered us so well for over 70 years. The shifting geopolitical conflicts, the rise of authoritarianism. Our challenge is that we must rise to meet and that NATO is extraordinarily important in. And as one of the NATO leaders, when we gather as leaders, as defense ministers and governments make decisions around investments and path forward, it is impossible to overstate the important role that all of you as parliamentarians play in this critical time. Because as leaders, yes, we make decisions around investments, around policy, around allocations, around a strategic path forward. But as democracies, we don't get to move forward unless citizens are involved and are supporting the work that NATO does. You as parliamentarians across NATO countries represent almost 1 billion people in the world. And the conversations that you have and the leadership you show on bringing your citizens along is more important than ever, because some of the greatest threats to NATO are not just aggressive, hostile actors with weapons and guns and arms. The destabilizing of the consensus around our democracies on the rule of law, the rise of misinformation, of disinformation, of attacks on truth, of attacks on the very institutions that have kept the level of stability and prosperity, not just across the Atlantic, but around the world, and led to unprecedented prosperity, those things are also under attack. And it is as political leaders, representatives, parliamentarians, that our collective roles in shaping public discourse and bringing citizens along in both understanding that, yes, this is a much more challenging world, and yes, we need to continue to commit ourselves every day to NATO and the principles that keep us safe in this uncertain world. Canada believes deeply in NATO. As a founding member, since 1949, we've taken part in nearly every single NATO operation around the world. Canadian soldiers can now be found around the world, in several NATO countries, particularly in Latvia, where we lead the multinational battle group. That's a battle group that comprises over 10 different countries working and operating together. Whereas many of the other battle groups have just one or two main countries, Canada has figured out to pull together almost a third of countries from NATO and is developing, alongside our partners, ways to make sure that we're just not working at the same time together, alongside each other, on the field and in conflicts, but that we're actually able to integrate, that we're actually able to operate seamlessly together, something that unfortunately is likely to become even more important in the coming years. The greatest strength of NATO is our capacity to work together across so many different languages, countries of origin, and perspectives. And how we can continue to work together is unbelievably important, and Canada is very happy with the role we're playing, where we know how important diversity is, in bringing together perspectives and abilities and operations from across the scope of NATO and demonstrate how we can work together more effectively. As parliamentarians, you all know that politics vary from country to country, and in many countries, and perhaps even in most countries, more conservative parties have a better reputation in terms of investing in NATO, investing in the military, than more progressive parties. There are lots of exceptions out there, but in general, that's sort of the story we tell ourselves. The more right-wing parties tend to invest more in defense, the more left-wing parties do less. That's actually been the reverse in Canada over the past couple of decades. When my progressive Liberal government took office in 2015, the previous Conservative government had dropped investments in defense to below 1% of our GDP. They were very good with photo ops and waving the flags.
And same with you.
They were not so good in making necessary investments, and they even cut veterans services.
And so do you.
And a number of different services for military families.
Our veterans are living in their cars.
So we ended up stepping up big time when we took office in 2015, doubled our spending on defense.
No, you haven't.
On our way to tripling the spending in defense by 2030. We are on a clear path to reach 2% in the coming years, because we know that the world is changing and Canada, along with our allies, needs to be ready for it. We added $175 billion in targeted spending. Now, one of the challenges we've always had with the 2% is that it doesn't really matter what you spend it on. What matters is that you just reach that limit. And Canada has never felt that way. We've made sure that our investments are as concrete as possible and contributing to the capacity of Canadians to continue to be involved and leading in so many different NATO aspects. We have to do more, and we are doing more. But particularly stepping up in the Arctic, stepping up in some of the most important challenges we're facing is something that all NATO countries can continue to count on Canada for.
All our waters are open.
We've invested massively in NORAD modernization, in our North Strong and Free defense policy update, in an ice pact on icebreakers. We've invested in warships, in aircrafts, in armored vehicles, in icebreakers, And we've announced that we are buying new submarines to patrol the Arctic, because that is more and more important as a theater, unfortunately. We bought...
Yeah, he bought all that, and it's only coming in 2030. We need this now. Russia's our neighbor. We could be hit, and he won't even care. We have nothing in the water, land, or air. We have nothing. We could be hit anytime, and he won't even care about us.
SAMs that have now been sent. Oh no, sorry. We also increased support for Ukraine. $4.5 billion to military spending since the beginning of this latest conflict, since Russia's illegal invasion. But close to $19 billion in total in support to Ukraine. And of course, like so many different countries, we have citizens asking, why is it that we are supporting this faraway country that has nothing to do with us in Canada? Well, first of all, in Canada, we have more to do with that, because Canada has thrived over the past 100 years because so many Ukrainians have come to settle our prairies and continue to contribute. So our closeness with Ukraine is unparalleled amongst NATO countries. But more than that country, Canada is a country, a middle power, that understands how important the rules-based order is in protecting all of us. And Russia's illegal invasion is not just about redrawing lines in the map in their neighborhood. It's about reintroducing into the world, long after it had disappeared, the idea that might makes right once again. If Russia succeeds in gaining an inch of territory in Ukraine because of their illegal invasion, countries around the world will look at their historical grievances around a border, will look at the fact that perhaps they have a slightly larger military than their neighbor, and wonder if it isn't time now to redraw lines on a map, to violate the UN Charter as Russia has, to once again destabilize the rules-based order in a way we had not seen since the end of the Second World War. The prosperity we have had for decades around this world happens because we agreed to rules and we abided by them, even through the Cold War. So part of the role that you have as parliamentarians is to make sure that in your debates, in your assemblies and parliaments, your citizens understand what is at stake in Ukraine. What is at stake all around the world where we see violations of the rules-based order, where we see creeping authoritarianism and breaking into chaos of institutions that have been serving us, not perfectly, but well, for decades. We are at a time right now where our adversaries are using the tools of democracy and free speech and online information and misinformation to weaken our capacity to stand up for the very rules that keep us safest. That's why Canada is so unequivocal around Ukraine. That is why the world needs to be so unequivocal around Ukraine. That is why NATO stands strong with Ukraine. Canada has supported the launch of NATO security assistance and training with an extra $500 million, $389 million to enhance F-16 pilot training.
Like, why are you giving all this money away? You could use it for Canadians. Use it for our own military. Why are you giving more money away? Taxpayer money going right to Ukraine. When our air, sea, and water are open and our military men and women are sleeping in their cars. This guy is a fucking joke.
We bought a NASAMS, which is now in Ukraine and will help Ukrainians defend themselves from Russia's vile and indiscriminate missile strikes which kill civilians, including children. We will continue to stand strong in condemning further escalation by Russia. But we see that after more than 1,000 days of failure now, Putin should understand that his attempts at intimidation only strengthen Ukraine's courage and resolve and strengthen the solidarity of Ukrainians, allies like our NATO countries. Solidarity and unity in support of Ukraine has never been so important. The same goes for our alliance. We will continue to work together to resolve challenges within us and around the world. But we need to continue to show to Russia and to all those who wish to emulate them.
What's going on here?
There is nothing to be gained through violence, through disregard for everywhere. Inflation has kicked people. Pressures are going to continue to undermine the case for investing in the NATO alliance, for investing in defense of Ukraine, for investing in the rules-based order. People saying, oh, well, let's take care of the affordability.
Sorry, buddy. Whoever's taking this in, their either Wi-Fi is acting up or something, but it's starting to lag. Let's see if it goes again. If it does, I'm just gonna shut it off.
Crisis first. Let's deal with some of the challenges that people are facing in their daily lives. We'll let the long term take care of itself. NATO is there to make sure we are watching this long term. Make sure we are ready for the uncertainty and the crises that are coming at us. We need to continue to make the case to invest in people's safety and security. We need to keep making the case to demonstrate the strength and the resolve of this alliance to protect the international rules-based order. Not just for the almost 1 billion citizens that collectively as parliamentarians we represent across NATO, but for the billions more around the world who benefit from the strength, steadfastness, and focus that you all have, that we all have as NATO members, that the world continue to be safe, prosperous, and stable. Merci beaucoup, mes chers amis. Thank you.
You guys hear that? We're giving more money away. We have nothing for us. Like, this guy's a fucking joke. If you like the channel, please like and subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, support the channel. God bless, stay safe, everybody.